Welcome back. We are still on the topic quadratic functions. In the previous video, we solved a question on solving quadratic equations. In this video, we are going to solve another question. The question for this video is solve for x if x squared minus 1 is equal to 0. So the equation is x squared minus 1 is equal to 0, and we are solving for s. So we are finding the solution or the roots of this equation. X squared minus 1 is equal to 0. You can see that the quadratic expression in this equation is also a binomial. But this expression is different from the one that we had in the previous video. In the previous video, we had a binomial, but in that binomial, it had an x squared term and an x term. Here, we are having an x squared term and a constant term. The x term is not here. So this is different from the one that we had in the previous video. We have learned that to solve a quadratic equation, the first thing you have to do is to factorize the quadratic expression in the equation. The quadratic expression here is x squared minus 1. So you will have to factorize x squared minus 1. When you have a quadratic expression like this, that is, when you have an x squared term minus a constant term, what you have to look for is whether you can express it as difference of two squares. We learned about difference of two squares in the videos on algebraic expressions. In that video, we learned that when you have an expression like this, x squared minus y squared, it is known as difference of two squares. So when you have one term squared minus another term squared, it is known as difference of two squares. And it can be factorized as x minus y into brackets, x plus y into another bracket. So when you have a quadratic expression like this, you have to ask yourself whether you can express it as a difference of two squares. So here, let's check whether we can express x squared minus 1 as a difference of two squares. Yes, we can, because 1 can be written as 1 squared. From indices, we learned that 1 squared is the same as 1 because 1 raised to the power any number is 1. So 1 can be written as 1 squared. Now this is what I mean. X squared minus 1 can be written as x squared minus 1 squared because 1 squared is 1. So we have x squared minus 1 squared is equal to 0. Now, x squared minus 1 squared is a difference of two squares. From what we have here, x squared minus 1 squared is a difference of two squares because we have the first term squared minus the second term squared. So we can factorize this difference of two squares. From what we have here, if you have difference of two squares, this is how the factorization is done. The first term minus the second term in one bracket, then the first term plus the second term in another bracket. So we do the same thing here. This time the first term is x and the second term is 1. So the factorization will be the first term x minus the second term 1 in one bracket, then the first term x plus the second term 1 in another bracket, and this is equal to 0. So now we have x minus 1 in one bracket, x plus 1 in another bracket, and it's equal to 0. We can now find the solution of this equation by equating the expression in the first bracket to 0. X minus 1 is equal to 0, and x will give us 1 from here. Then we equate the expression in the second bracket also to 0. So x plus 1 is equal to 0, and from here we will have x is equal to minus 1. So the solution of the equation x squared minus 1 is equal to 0 is x is equal to 1 or minus 1. So whenever you have a quadratic equation like this, that is a quadratic equation where the expression in the equation is a binomial, and the binomial is the square term minus a constant, The first thing that you have to do is to check whether you can write the expression as a difference of two squares. If you can write the expression as a difference of two squares, you do that, and then from there you can factorize the quadratic expression. After that, you equate the first bracket to 0, then you equate the second bracket to 0 to find the solution of the quadratic equation. So by doing that, the solution of this quadratic equation, x squared minus 1 is equal to 0, is x is equal to 1 or minus 1. As we saw in the previous video, our calculator can be used to solve a quadratic equation. So let's use the calculator to cross-check our answer here. On the calculator, we will be asked to provide the values of A, B, and C. So let's do that before we switch on the calculator. To get the values of A, B, and C, we will compare our quadratic expression here to the general form of a quadratic expression, which is AS squared plus BS plus C. When we look at our quadratic expression here, which is x squared minus 1, we can see that it does not have an x term. That means that the coefficient of x in this quadratic expression is 0. So we can rewrite it as x squared plus 0x minus 1. 0x is 0, so you end up having x squared minus 1. So it is the same thing here. Now we can compare. Coefficient of x squared here is 1, so it means that a is equal to 1. Coefficient of x here is 0, so it means that b is equal to 0. The constant here is minus 1, so it means that c is equal to minus 1. So a is 1, b is 0, and c is minus 1. Let's enter this information into our calculator. So you switch on your calculator, you press on mode, you select equation, which is the fifth option, then you select quadratic equation, which is the third option. Okay, the calculator is asking us for A. A is 1, so you press 1 and equal to. B is 0, so 0 and equal to. C is minus 1, so you enter minus 1 and equal to. Then you press equal to again. The calculator is giving us x1, that is the first answer, as 1, and x2, that's the second answer, as minus 1. So it means that the solution to this equation is s is equal to 1 or minus 1. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to this channel for more videos. In the next video, we are going to solve another question on solving quadratic equations. Bye bye.